South Side, it keeps getting built up more and more.
Somebody asked me, well, when do you think the South Side is going to build another HEB? I'm thinking, another HEB? Good Lord. That would be 8. Do we need 8 HEBs? So welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. I am John, and I am here with festive Tom Tarver. Tom, always good to see you, brother. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, John. How are you this morning?
I am A-OK, getting into the spirit. Got my Feliz Navidad shirt on. So I got a few more holiday t-shirts.
I don't need Google shirt on. My wife knows everything. So
it's actually in trouble.
It's actually a Christmas gift. So
okay.
Guess from whom?
The one who knows all.
Yeah, all my retirement t-shirts, she got those, and all my funnier ones, like forget what the other ones. It's funny, I know what the theme is. The theme is distractions. If I had a nickel for every time I got distracted, ice cream.
That's right. It's a story of my life, man. That's me. I tell people it's one of the greatest days of my life when Gloria finally looked at me and said, "You're not kidding, are you?" Like, I would forget stuff, or I'd be thinking about something else, and she thought I was just, trying to get out of whatever, or I was joking around. But no, I forgot. What were we talking about right now? It was a freeing moment of our relationship, and it was good. Brad's out this week.
Yeah, when she recognized that you really are, you're not putting on.
She's like, "Lord, this is the man you gave me. Thank you, Jesus." So Brad's out this week. Brad's doing some pastoral ministry, and so we wish him well. And we are going to truck along here. We've done several by ourselves, you and I, Tom.
Yeah. We kicked the whole thing off.
We did. That's right. So blame us if you need someone to blame Tom and I. So I have this article, Tom, that I feel be interesting. The topic itself is a topic we talk about a lot around here because it matters to us about what's happening in our churches and people not coming as often as they used to, people dropping out. Matter of fact, it's what we talked about last week in a way. Talked about some reasons why people were leaving. But this article comes from NPR and just came out a couple of days ago. Great little article. As attendance dips, sorry. Would you rather your attendance dip or slip?
Yeah. Do I need an attendance slip?
That's right. Where were you? As attendance dips, churches change. Can you believe that, Tom? Is there any other phrase in ecclesial study that just seems so ironic? Churches change.
Yeah, and first of all, it reminds me of it's been a few weeks ago when you were talking about flying drums, that as a part of a presentation, a church worship experience. And that's one of those changes I'm going, I think, when we start moving into entertainment, trying to entertain the masses or attract the masses with entertainment, that's not a direction I would encourage going. But on the other hand, the fact that the church has changed from the very beginning and has discussed what those changes would be, because Acts is this movement from 12 disciples, the remaining disciples. What are we going to do? And the 100 plus people who were with them praying. And then all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit comes down, really both literally and symbolically, lights a fire on the church. And the message spreads throughout Jerusalem, this Jewish community, but it keeps spreading, and it goes to the half-breeds, the Gentile Jewish groups known as the Samaritans, and then it heads on out. And at some point, somewhere in the book of Acts, which is talking about this, this movement, they're having to gather together. And I don't remember which chapter it is. I'm thinking it's somewhere around chapter 16. But by that time, the gospel message has been so transformational that it's moved into communities that never were Jewish.
Yeah.
And okay, so now what do we do? Do we keep up our Jewish rituals and our Jewish religious laws and teach them that? And they're kind of like, no, it comes down to this, and it's just a few things, so that that when Jewish and non-Jewish Christians come together, there wouldn't be these truly offensive things to either culture that would be happening. So
the church has always tried to figure out how to adapt itself and what it needs to either change or do or become as it's becoming all of this stuff, right?
Yeah,
you see that.
Yeah, and there is an anchor to that, or a foundation to all of that, and
Sure.
It's the person of Jesus Christ. So,
right.
So it's the centrality of the message centered around Jesus Christ. And then, what are the things that we have to change because of the culture, and what are we going to change within the culture because we're here? So, those two things are interacting. Is like, we're not becoming the culture around us. We're influencing the culture around us, but we're becoming enough, here's something as simple as we're learning the language. It's not my native language. English is, I grew up with English, but if I, in certain circumstances, in order to adapt to the culture around me, I'm going to learn Spanish, which I'm working on.
Lynn Sweet, always, his book, he always talked about, how did he put it? The printing press world versus the Google world, speaking of your shirt, right? And those two worlds are completely different, right?
Oh,
and the church, they learned to adapt to the printing press world, but the Google world is here. It has been here. It's going to be here. And how do we adapt to that now? That's kind of a big picture sense of kind of where we are. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have been trying to figure out what we do, what we become, and how we do things for a long time. So to act like this, some of this is like absolutely new, is kind of maybe living in the moment too much, not seeing beyond ourselves. So, and you use the word culture, which is good because it ties in a lot with something that comes out of this article that I appreciate a lot. As attendance dips, churches change to stay relevant for a new wave of worshipers. Do you have a problem with that word relevant, Tom, when it comes to church ministry?
Yes and no. I mean, for the most part, no, I don't have a problem with that. I think some of our irrelevance is connected to some of the things we have traditionally done. But the desire to know God and to love God and to be known by God and to be loved by God, that message is always relevant in every culture, in every century, and every time. Google world or Gutenberg world. In fact, right. We're going to adjust the message, but it's still going to be the message.
Right. All right. So this article introduces us to Pastor Chris Battle, and I think I'd like to meet Pastor Chris, a big man with a pipe clenched in his generous smile. And they're talking about him having church. This is in Knoxville, Tennessee. And there's a small group on a Sunday morning sitting around a fire pit in a community garden. 3 years ago, Battle walked away from more than 3 decades leading Black Baptist churches and turned his attention to Battlefield Farming Gardens in Knoxville. They grow vegetables and sell them at a farmer's market. They also collect unsold produce from around the city and deliver it to people in public housing once a week. This is now their church. Battle says he left because traditional church was not connecting with people. He felt they were turned off by the sermons, the pitches for money, and the Sunday morning formality of it all. Do our churches have trouble connecting, like really connecting with people? What do you think he means by that?
Well, one of the things it makes, this goes back a lot of years. One of the churches that I served up in Wisconsin, where, and I've never forgotten this. That's why I can tell the story now, because I haven't forgotten it. No, yeah, there were two women. They were about the same age. They were actually, I think, as old as I am now, or older. So I'm in my 60s. So they were 60s, 70s, and they had been longtime members in the church. And they sat, one pew. One woman sat in the pew in front of the other woman, and I mean, there's probably the one behind could have reached out and touched the head of the one in front. They did not know one another by name at all, and that shocked me. It's like, you two are longtime members. You've been sitting near one another all these years, and you don't even know the person's name who sits right there. And so one of the things that happens within the context of the church is we can come, we can experience worship. Hopefully, one of the reasons that those ladies were actually in the church where I pastored, on some level, individually, they were connecting with God.
Sure.
But but on the other side of that, we can go through all of that and never connect with our community of faith. And certainly we can go through all of that and not connect with the community that surrounds us.
Yeah.
And I think that's, one of the things that we see in the scriptures is how the gospel got out, not because people gathered in a building or gathered in a particular designated worship spot. It's because those who carried the good news about Jesus Christ went to the places where people gathered. The philosophical gathering in Athens, the place where people gathered, I think it was beside a river, for something other than worship. Just that they went to where the community gathered, but they brought the message with them.
So yeah, talk about you see a lot of churches still trying to do theology on tap kind of things, or when we had Michael Beck here, talking about fresh expressions, church at the tattoo parlor, things like that, church at the dog park. You see this kind of idea that people have. We need to be where people are, because that's where relationships are formed, right? And so Battle says these ideas that the institutional church, I think, we're not fostering and nurturing real relationships. And to me, that's burdensome, because I feel like that's exactly what the church is supposed to be. Like at our church, Tom, we emphasize a lot the family of God, and that's supposed to mean something, right? Now, maybe we're the crazy uncle in the family or the long lost cousin, but we're still the family, right? And that means something whenever we see each other. That means something for how we interact with each other, and even the expectations we have of each other. And so to know that, and I do know myself, exactly like you, I could probably come up with a few stories myself in churches we've been a part of. It's like, yeah, these are people you see every week, and yeah, I don't know them at all.
Right.
And how we let that happen is beyond me.
One of the things that was really helpful just happened a few days ago with our church. Meaning, for those who don't know, I'm a retired pastor, and I attend Kelsey Memorial United Methodist Church in Corpus Christi, where John is the pastor. Anyway,
He's
church
always on me about my sermons. Golly, man.
Our church gathered Friday night, men's enchilada dinner, and two things happened that day for me that was definitely outside of the worship experience on Sunday morning. One is there were those who needed to be there as the men's group that was providing the meal, although it was the women who were in the kitchen making sure we did it right. And the ladies did a great job of getting us moving in the right direction. But I was there to help prepare the enchiladas. And I was only there about an hour, but in that hour, I learned, one of the ladies' names that I didn't know. I learned about her husband. It was a chef. Didn't meet him because he hadn't arrived yet. Later, and then so that happened in a working environment where we're working side by side, doing something together. And then that evening, Ellen and I sat down, and there were those that we already knew. And then we began to learn the extended family aspect. And this was now, instead of doing something together, now we were seated at the dinner table together, and we learned about the different connections. And even as we were leaving, and you will know that these, just by my description, you'll know this group of ladies. But we met 4 ladies who were all sisters. One of them stopped us as we were on our way out, and we're talking, and she said, "This is my sister. She's 99 years old, and this is my other sister. She's 90, and I don't know if she's 92 or 91, because I think there was a little discrepancy there. She's 92, no, I'm 91, or the other way around. I don't remember. But anyway, we're all sisters, and I've seen these ladies every week. I didn't know that they were sisters. I didn't know that this woman, and I've seen her every Sunday that I'm there. I see her son helping her into the church and out of the church. And now I learned she's 99 years old. And so those kind of things happen, and they build community, and you feel a part of it because you now know their names and they know your name.
That's great. And one of those sisters is my 85-year-old barber, by the way. She does. Yeah. And I mean, she's an actual barber. She's not like one of these just people who can cut. She's a barber. Anyway. All right. So yeah, connections, community. Someone said, I read something, I don't remember, but if whatever new ministry you do in the next season of a church, do it around a table. And I really appreciated that, because that just the word table alone speaks to us a lot, because draws us to the imagery of a communion table. But just what the table means even beyond that, just it's fellowship, it's uniting, right? And it's common need and common space, and it's everything. So yeah, whatever ministry you're going to do it around a table. That's and even like, how do we reach out? Well, reach out around a table, instead of just the let me just go do something for somebody, put in my my morning at the food bank or at the homeless shelter, whatever else, and then be done with it. Find a way to be at the table with someone, and watch how that interaction and that communion can change things. All right. So he said, I felt they were turned off.
Well, I want to build on that, because just this
morning, Bob the Builder.
Yeah, I was with a friend, and we have coffee on Monday mornings together, and we were just reminiscing. Of course, this year Christmas falls on Sunday.
Yep.
And different churches or are making different decisions about what they're going to do. Kelsey has decided we are going to have worship services on Christmas Eve. Now, my former church, Asbury, and unless I've misunderstood, or unless they change it, are not meeting on Christmas morning. And I remember that during my time as pastor, that also happened. And I don't remember, because we were kind of talking about what we did, And I think, I don't remember if this happened on Christmas morning or if it happened the next week on New Year's Day. But what we decided is we're going to make it simple. Mm-hmm. We're going to actually read a children's book with illustrations, and have, but we and at Asbury we could do this. We could simply move the chairs out, bring tables in, and we brought in round tables and put chairs around them. Then there were two rocking chairs up front, and my associate pastor, Trudy Paul, and I sat up front, and we talked about Christmas, and we read this story that was Christmas related, and people sat around tables, and we were just talking. Bill and I were talking this morning about the significant difference between lining up in rows in pews or chairs versus sitting around a table. And what naturally happens when you sit around a table is now you're facing one another, mm-hmm. and you may it may initially be awkward at first because you're not used to seeing another person and talking with them, but eventually what happens is you begin to engage in conversation, and you get to know one another. So when you talk about the table, we did that, and I was telling, it was a very special moment in my pastoral life to be a part of that planning and to see it pulled off. And if I were going to start from scratch, I would start with round tables in a worship experience. So
hey Tom, you maybe you can help me do this. If anybody from Kelsey is listening, which if they're not, that really defeats the purpose of us having this podcast to begin with. But we got to get rid of the long tables, man. I think churches need to have round tables. It's too easy if they're long tables. Oh, you're down there. I don't have to. Okay, you're on that side of the table. But the round tables, they draw us together. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program. So that's awesome. Yeah, having the tables as part of our worship, I think is meaningful in a lot of ways. And we've actually done that in a couple ways. We were getting started with some of that right before pandemic. As a matter of fact, I think the last gathering that we had as a church before the pandemic was actually the early March. We did exactly that. We were gathered around tables. We had communion. We had a meal. We were worshiping, and it was, to me, it was beautiful and very meaningful. And I'm hoping we can get back to that. So, Pastor, what's his name? Pastor Chris says that he needed to find a different way to do church differently. And I mean, even your idea about, Christmas Day around the table, that sounds dramatically different for a lot of people. And so, but even if it's just a simple idea like that, it is something that helps us kind of see beyond where we are to make sure we are building community, fostering relationships, connecting with the gospel, and deepening our communion with each other. Now, this church, they do it a little differently. They, like you heard at the beginning, they have a community garden, and they use that, and they take in other resources to give to other people as well, and that's their community action. What about the other part? As a pastor, Tom, we don't have to go too far, but when he says the people were turned off by the sermons, the pitches for money, and the Sunday morning formality, did you ever have a problem with the pitching for money part?
That's one of the uncomfortable areas that was one of the uncomfortable areas for me as a pastor, knowing that in order to have, it's just like as a homeowner, I know there are expenses. I've got to pay the county taxes, the electric bill, the gas and water bill. Those things happen. They're a part of our budget at home, and the same thing happens within a church. And I tell you, say at Kelsey, I never think about those things. I don't feel ownership to those things. But in my case, Ellen and I are tithers, and so we give as regularly as the income comes in, and so but as a pastor, and this, not everyone is a giver at all, or is a giver, and even fewer of them are tithers. And so if those things came in, you would never have to have conversations about that. So that's just a reality of owning a building or property, which moves it into a different conversation when you're talking about not having property and meeting in a public place.
Well, and then what happens also, you have all this need that you have, and before you know it, like that need kind of takes on a life of its own, right?
Yeah.
No wonder we can't foster community, because we got to get these bills paid, and we don't have time for that, sitting around the table stuff. How are we gonna get these bills paid? How are we gonna get the insurance taken care of? Which is all real things that we need to do, because that's our responsibility at a place like this. But there was a church in town that they didn't have a building. They were meeting at another church's facility, renting space from them. Mm-hmm. And things were, it was vibrant. Things were exciting. It was growing numerically and otherwise. And, things were happening. And so they decided we need to build our own church, right? And so the excitement that comes into that, right? Let's raise money and blah, blah, blah. And so now they're on the other side of having that building themselves. Well, then now things are different. I'm not saying that, they've stopped growing or anything like that, but now the priority isn't, okay, let's get this done. Now it's like, and now we got to take care of this thing, right? And that just kind of takes on a different deal. And I'm a horrible salesperson, Tom. I'm the guy who says, look, do you want it or not? Right. And that doesn't work in the sales world. So even when it comes to at the church, I'm like, look, this is your church. Right, do you want to take care of this or not? If you do, then why do I need to get up here and beg you to give more money? I'm not going to do that. You see the wall falling down. You see everything else. If it's your church, you want to take care of it. So
and for those
at home, growing edge.
I haven't seen any walls falling down at Kelsey, in case you're wondering. Yeah.
You ain't been here long enough, bro.
Yeah.
No, but the point is I've never been, I'm just like, because like, our house, or if I see something, we're just going to do it. And that's a growing edge of mine, Tom. I'm always working on myself. All right. So the point,
but on the other hand, it comes back to, what am I responsible for, as a pastor? And if I take the scriptures, direction, let's say that what I'm responsible for as a pastor is to provide or to proclaim the good news in Jesus Christ. That's what I'm responsible for. Mm-hmm. I'm also responsible for overseeing leadership. Seeing that those who are in leadership positions within the church, that they are believers in Christ, that they are reflecting basically the culture of the church. And hopefully that would be that they believe in Jesus Christ, are willing to serve, and they're giving. Those are the things I'm responsible for.
Okay, so see what else he says. We're trying to create this community that people can learn to love each other and ultimately love the world and transform it through collard greens and okra, he says, with another hearty laugh. Again, it's how can you let your church be the church without some of the formality? And I'm not against the formality. I think people have that wrong about me. I'm not against liturgy. I'm not against and that stuff. It's just when it's not connecting us to one another, or even truly to the gospel, when it's just kind of like, this is what we do, let's get it over with, then I have a problem with anything that gets us like that, right? Let's see. And the article also talks about another pastor there in the area, kind of the same thing, churches closing 2 to 5 churches every year, that's kind of where we're at as well in our area too. at least, and finding different ways. They have a coffee. What's it? A coffee place. People love coffee, right? I guess.
But it's going to say, but to be the church where he was formerly a pastor. It may or not. It's a former United Methodist Church,
right,
that did close, and in its place is a business and a coffee shop. And though it's not like the church started the business or the coffee shop, those moved in when the church moved out.
Yeah, and I've seen that. We have in town. We have an old church that's been closed for years, and I mean, it still has that church structure, of course, that you look at. Oh, it's a church, but it's filled with an 501. It's filled with a nonprofit organization, and I think another business that's in there as well. And it's just that's kind of where we're at. And if you don't see a building, an old church building, actually on the way to Galveston, I forget what town it is. I'd go and I see there was a church closed down, and on the marquee it said "Church for Sale." And I was always kind of snarky about it. I wanted to make up some kind of sermon about the church being for sale. This last time I went, it was finally bought, and now it's like one of these game rooms, like the the betting rooms and all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, there it is. But anyway, so here's the part, and this ends the article, and it kind of ends our conversation as well. But he talks about the pastor used to measure the success of a church by what he calls the BPs: butts in pews, bucks in the plate, baptism in the pool, and building programs, the BPs. When he was senior pastor, the question used to be, how can the church change the culture? Today, he says, how do we change the culture of the church? Tom, that's the question I leave with you, because I feel like exactly what you talked about towards the beginning, like in Acts, and then you see in church history, we're always, the church is trying to figure out, how do we share this gospel? How do we share not only what we believe, but how do we share our life that has been transformed by the gospel in ways that are meaningful for everyone around us, holding on to that person of Jesus, but communicating all of that in a way that the world can understand, where it feels like, I don't know, last several generations, it's been like, no, we're going to build this, and this is ours, and this is how it is, and there's nothing else that we need to do. This is it, right? How do we change that culture? And or what metrics do we look at now that show us what our culture is?
Well, it's thinking every culture is different. I mean, just that's Corpus Christi. Somebody would ask, how do you dress for church? And I said, we're Corpus Christi casual, which is, it's more than just casual. It's Corpus Christi casual. We're a city by the sea, and the breezy city or something like that. What is it?
Sparkling city by the sea.
By the sea, yeah. So that that's this culture. We were, I've served. I've literally served the Lord Jesus Christ all around the world. I've been in Russia. I've been in the Middle East. I pastored a church. My first church was ranch country southwest of San Antonio. My next church was dairy country in northwest Wisconsin. I mean, completely different. And each culture is not about trying programs and trying to figure out which programs work or whatever. But I remember, again, another story from a while back. It was a university, and they were going to put in sidewalks. I don't know if it's a recent, addition or something, but I remember that what they decided to do is let the students come and for a semester and not have sidewalks. And after the semester, then looked at the paths that they had created and say, okay, that's where we need to put the sidewalks in.
Right.
And I think, again, this idea of our foundation, our anchor, our one and only message is we present Jesus Christ. But in one of the things that I know has happened here in Corpus Christi, in one of the United Methodist churches, one is they have a yoga class, which this article mentions.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have a yoga class? But because they know within the context of the people that they came in contact with, that was one of the things that would bring people in and help center them in some type of Christian spiritual experience.
Yeah.
But they have spent, and maybe they're continuing to spend a lot of time in the community on Friday nights when there's activities along the shoreline, and listening to what's happening within that setting, which is close to where they serve. And so they're getting to know their neighborhood and what their neighborhood, what kind of neighborhood it is. Yeah. And I think that's where we start with the gospel, but then we listen to the culture and we see how this connects with this and bring them together.
Okay. So some of the metrics then kind of, and in closing, it's counting butts in the seat is not going to be what it used to be.
Nickels and noses.
Nickels and noses. Yes. Building projects. I think we're kind of past some of that for the most part. Now, a lot of us, we're the ones dealing with it now. That how do you pay for it? How do you take care of it? How do you maintain it? And so maybe better metrics is, how many new people did we meet, this year as a church? How many new ministries around the table did we create in church or out of church, right? Facilities. How many people did you pray with for the first time, right? Things like that. Things that, not to say, okay, we want to keep track of everything you say and do because now it's a report, but it just help us understand, like, that's who we are. We are relational. And this is something that the church has always done. We have always connected. We have always shared. And so how can we ensure that is a priority as a part of our the culture that we have? And it's not just business as usual, right? Business as usual is no good business for us. And I'm hopeful for where we can go from here. Yeah. Around the table.
We're not a business. We're a community.
Amen to that. All right. So we'll leave it there. Tom, I appreciate that. That's good stuff. And one of the things I appreciate about you, Tom, that I see it, like, you're like good at that. You're one of the people that can help other people learn how to do that. A lot of people are like, I don't know how to say hello to somebody. Or, I don't know how to introduce myself. I don't know how to have a conversation with people I've never met. I've seen in you, you're one of those people who can do that. Right. And so that's something I think a lot of people can learn from somebody like you. Like, how do you just do that? Right. It just seems impossible, but that's part of I think a growing culture in knowing how to just be willing to say, hi, I'm glad you're here. My name is, what's your name? And just let it be what it is after that. So I appreciate that about you, Tom. And I appreciate all your input today. That was wonderful. Pay attention to how things are changing and what kind of table ministry might God be calling you to. All right. So thanks for the gift of your time. Thanks for tuning in this week. We will see you next week. It'll be Christmas next time we air. Tom, ho, ho, ho.
Boy, I'm going, but I have ordered all my gifts.
Very good.
And I just haven't wrapped all my gifts.
Those are two different things you got to do, Tom.
Yep.
All right. Have a good rest of the week. God be with you.
And thanks, John. Thanks for the compliment and thanks for the time.
Yes, sir.